Welcome, everybody, to the Table Rush Talk Show. I'm your host, Mischa Zvegintzov. Today, I had an enlightening conversation with Vangelis Guenther, a tech industry pioneer. Vangelis has an incredible journey from his early days at IBM to co-founding a cutting-edge tech firm. We delved into his experiences at the forefront of innovations like the internet and AI, and he shared his profound insights on personal growth and embracing change. Get ready to unlock the secrets to driving success in your own life. Without further ado, let's dive into my interview with Vangelis Guenther. Vangelis, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Fantastic. And say your last name for me.
It's Guenther. It's German. I have a Greek first name because I was born in Greece. My Greek name actually is Vangelis Kalahiro. And Vangelis means messenger of truth, messenger of good news. And my parents that adopted me when I was 2, they changed my name. And so that's why Guenther, the German name in the end.
Awesome. I'm going to hit pause real quick. And Vangelis, so German roots, love it. My mother actually came over from Germany, so I'm more German than anything, even though I have the very authentic Russian name. So it was grandfather who was Russian. My mother was German, and I can still hear her with that accent that you gave, calling me home for dinner in my youth.
Do you speak any German?
Unfortunately, I don't. Do you?
Well, that was my second language, actually. I learned English in school, and then I grew up in San Antonio, Texas, so I speak German, English, and Spanish fluently.
Cool. That's incredible. I unfortunately only speak English or American. Call it what you will.
Okay.
Yeah, so my father was born in the States, and I think when you've got parents who don't speak, since both my parents didn't speak German or Russian, neither of them were passed down to me. It's hard for parents to pass that down if
Sure.
both aren't doing it. Yeah. So you've had quite a life. You had a ton of success, sold a company for millions of dollars, or achieved multimillionaire status. And I think what's important about that is that we were just having a quick pre-conversation before this interview, but that perhaps you weren't happy, even though you achieved that shiny object that so many of us can be hunting for. And in your travels through life, you have worked with and seen, I don't know, hundreds or perhaps thousands of multimillionaire executives, founders, business owners who have had that financial success, but were perhaps miserable. Yes?
Yes, absolutely. It's one of those stories that it's very common where when I was 4 years old, my mom gave me a Elvis Presley, a GI Blues album. I wanted to be a musician. I wanted to play music. I wanted to be in movies and all that stuff. And when I was 17, I was playing with studio musicians. That's what I really wanted to do in life. But, and I can say fortunately or unfortunately, the environment I was in, I was told by school counselors, pastors, my parents, music is not a career. Well, that's what I want to do, but that's not a career. And so I started living not my life, which is basically the theme of my coaching program is if you're not living what you really want to live, then you have to put a mask on and you have to create a persona because you got to function in life. You can't be sad like what's the matter? Well, I'm not doing what I want to do. You can't do that. So what I ended up doing is I started working in the technology field. And I did that for 45 years. And like you said earlier, that's how I started traveling because I started working with companies to connect them to the internet back in 95. And, back in that day, they said, no one's going to do this. And then when cable companies came out and said, people are going to watch movies over the cable, I said, that's not going to happen. So I basically have been a pioneer my entire life, doing things that everyone says is not going to happen. So here I am, Mischa, getting deeper into what I really don't want to do. And that's where I find many people because you have to get certified and you have to take tests and you're getting deeper and deeper. The whole time in the back of your mind, you're thinking, this is not what I want to do. And so I was successful in the eyes of the world. I live just a couple of miles away from you in Carlsbad, California, $1.3 million home on a hill with an entire ocean view. And here I am feeling somewhat trapped because I can't tell people I'm really not happy. Well, you should be grateful. My gosh. Okay. So I can't even share how I feel. Do you know what I mean? You can't say something because the people you're around are millionaires too. And so, but they, I think deep down also, they don't want to say something either because it's embarrassing. So in my travels, I found all these people that were in the same position. A lot of money, successful, but sad. And so they would meet me after class. They would meet me after a deployment. They would meet me after an installation, wherever it was, Australia, Canada, Europe, whatever. And they would say, I'm supposed to be happy, but I'm not. And I would spend hours. And here's the thing, for free, because it was just us talking. And then they'd take my advice and their lives would change. And about, I'd say 5-6 years ago, someone said, you got to start charging. This is ridiculous, man. You're helping changing people's lives. And that's how this got started, where I said, okay, I realized that when you have something for free, people don't really take it seriously. And so when I start charging now people start realizing I have to invest in myself. So that's basically where I am today.
So quick, tell me about your program, what you're doing with it, what you're trying to achieve, or break it down for me.
Sure. Most of the people can identify with what I just told you because they're successful. They're not really, the problem isn't making money. The problem is I want to live me and I want to be happy. Don't get rid of the house, but I just want to be happy where I'm at. So I have a bunch of tools that I have picked up. And 15 years ago is when I changed my life. I said, look, I'm not happy. And I even said some words like I hate my life because it was just terrible. So I started reading books. I started going to seminars and actually I grew up in a very, very, very restrictive religious environment where the only book you could read was the Bible. So I had to change everything in my life. And so I got out of all of that, started reading, going to seminars, and just started discovering me. So that's kind of the first thing that we do is, who are you? Because I didn't know who I was. I had worn that mask for so many years and I was such a good actor, Mischa. Hey, yeah, great. Yeah. And you're dying inside, but you're like, yeah, how you doing? Oh, great. Fantastic, man. Couldn't be better. And so you live that way so long. So part of what I do is I help people to get past that facade. And that takes the time because to be honest with yourself is one of the most challenging things to do. Because someone asked me 15 years ago, are you happy? I don't even know what that means. I don't have a reference point for that because everything I've done is I did happy, pretended to be happy. And so when you ask me, am I happy? I don't know. I don't have a reference. So I start working on going inside. When they say, find yourself, it's such a trivial phrase, but it's one of those things where to find yourself and really see who you are is really an adventure. And so I make it an adventure where, okay, you're going to find out you're an amazing person. And so once you do that and you're not afraid to look inside, then everything starts changing. And because I've been an instructor for over 30 years, part of the job of an instructor, my definition, is to collapse time. Because I've already been through stuff for years, decades, and maybe it might take you 3 years, but it took me like 20. So that's what we do. And that's really what you're paying, you're investing in yourself and you're paying for that time collapse, right? Because everyone can read books. Everyone has all the answers, Mischa. But do you want to spend 20 years finding them? So that's how I start. And that's how I get things going to discover who you are.
So take me back 15 years ago. You hate your life. It's time to change. You know that, or maybe you don't even know it's time to change, or maybe this awareness starts to percolate like, okay, I can change. I don't know what that is. I'll let you put it into words, but how is that? How is it manifesting? So you said a few things. I hate my life. I mean, maybe break down some feelings, and then, what are you thinking? What are you doing? Like, take me back like there's a camera watching you to that you 15 years ago. You've got the barbecue going. You're probably grilling something. You're looking out. I know that area in Carlsbad, and it's beautiful. You can see the ocean, the Pacific Ocean. You're probably grilling something, perhaps. I don't know. People on the veranda with cocktails. I don't know. I mean, thinking, feeling, break it down for me. How is it
Great.
necessary? Yeah,
It's a
go ahead.
great. I believe that there must have been some switch inside me that before I came here, I said, look, I got to have a switch that clicks at a certain point. You know how when someone like a hypnotist puts you in a trance and says, when I speak these words, you'll wake up. There must have been something like that because I was in an organization, a church, and I was creating music, singing, all this kind of stuff. And music was something I wanted to do in my life. And it was getting sadder and sadder. And I was enjoying myself less and less. And I said, okay, something's just not right. Because the thing that I really am passionate about is not doing anything for me anymore. So that's kind of what happened. And that was like 5 or 6 years of that just, right? And then I kept making decisions, but they weren't mine because it was like people were dictating things to you. No one really asked me, Vangelis, what do you want to do? They said, okay, here's what you need to do.
Some examples
Well,
of like, yeah.
I never wanted to buy this house. Never wanted to because I didn't want a house. That wasn't my dream. Well, this is what God wants for you. When do I get to live what I want? And so I said, well, okay. And so I did that. And when I was in school, 45 years ago, I said, okay, I want to do music. That's not a career. And the only 3 things available for you are law, engineering, and accounting. How come what I want to do is not on the list? And so that's how my life was, Mischa. It's like dictated. I was taught to listen to your elders, listen to your teachers, listen to the pastors. And so when you're 2 years old and that's all you ever hear, you're indoctrinated. You're indoctrinated that, if you don't listen, the word is rebellious. And so I never got in trouble because I was always the good kid, right? Because that's what you were taught. If you're good, and here's the kicker, things will be great. Well, they weren't. I did everything I was told. I made all A's, but we expect that. My piano teacher told my mom, your son's a prodigy. Okay. So it's like, if I come in first, that's expected. So there was no way to ever exceed. And so that just kept building and building until finally I was in the Crown Plaza Hotel room 1424 in Chicago, O'Hare, back in 2009. And that is when I said, if this is it, I don't want to be here anymore. I'm out of here. I don't have to die to go to hell. I'm already in hell. And that was kind of like the turning point because it had been building like, you put a thing on a pot and finally it just blows. And that's what happened. So it was a gradual thing, but that's kind of all those pieces that came together. And that's how I dissect things when I work with people. It's exactly what you asked is what you find out. Where did you stop being you? And then you go back to that.
So a lifetime in the church, perhaps, following the dictates of the church leadership, and not to poo-poo the church leadership, but just they had a myopic or a smaller vision for you than perhaps you had for yourself. Not that one's better than the other. There are people who, I believe, do find happiness and success and fulfillment in that corporate ladder. I think what happens is when we get shoved into that corporate ladder or shoved into that box that you're talking about, and then we're like, God, we shouldn't be in this box. And then the next thing I know, I've got a house and a mortgage and all these things and a career and my identity is tied up in it. That's what happened to me. I was like businessman, mortgage loan professional, successful, all these things. And all these things that I'm good at start killing me internally, right? Spiritually, emotionally. perhaps even literally. I've always been relatively healthy, so no drinking or drugs, or I quit that in my teen years, and active and eating right. But it was clear that the stress of this life I had created was going to give me a heart attack, probably. What am I trying to say here? So I can relate to that, and perhaps anybody listening is in that spot or been through that spot. So you're in this hotel room. What was it?
Crown Plaza.
The Crown
Yeah.
Plaza. And are you like, I'm gonna leap out the window, or I'm gonna take these pills, or I'm gonna?
No, it wasn't that drastic. It was more, for the first time in my life, I'm not going to care what anybody says. All of the people in my life were in my life because I did everything for free. As soon as I said, I don't want to do that. Well, what a friend you are. Got it. Okay. So all these decades, not years, decades, you and I have been together every week. That's how I felt. And it was just because I did things for you, which you clearly start finding out. Because see, all these relationships were based on rules. And the rule was, do what I say. Do what I say. And then I said, okay, so that was the biggest thing. And so that was me jumping out the window to say, I'm not going to do what you want me to do anymore. And think about it, because I was helping people that didn't want help. I was an out of control healer. I say, hey, if you go continue, you're going to fall off. And I would pull them back. So for me to say, all right, if I say you're going to fall down and kill yourself and you keep going, I'm not going to pull you back. That was another falling out of the window, because that was always think of others, never of yourself. You see what I mean? So it was like my entire foundation of how I lived my life. I had to destroy it. That was the pill, you see? And so this is how drastic I had to be. And then I started realizing another thing that just really changed my life was, how you're taught, okay, my first thing that I did to change my life was prayer. Then positive thinking came around, and then the visualization and the vision boards, and then the 3x5 note cards, and then the binaural and all the stuff. And then I meet this guy, and I was his house, and I said, oh, wait, that's a 1964 Mustang. Yes, number 5. How did you get that? Well, this guy was trying to sell it, and he couldn't sell it, so he gave it to me for free. But you don't like American cars. I know, I don't like them. Oh my gosh, I thought, wow. Everything I have learned about what you have to do is false. This guy did not pray about it. He was not positive. It was negative. He didn't have it on his vision board. He didn't have it in his 3x5s. He didn't have his meditations. He didn't even wrap the thing, and he gets it. And I thought, oh my God, another turning point, Mischa. Huge turning point. Because aren't we all taught that you got to do things? And here's a guy that didn't do anything. And so that's another thing that came into my life. And about 6-7 years ago, I changed a lot of stuff in my life too, because I stopped doing all this work, realizing, and that's when that's the Arno Karan thing, because I went to his seminar back in 2014 and I said, man, I've done everything. He says, yeah, you got blocks. Okay. So this guy doesn't have a block. No. That's it. You got a block. So I spent probably 8-9 years discovering all the blocks, all the patterns of thought that were taught to me since I was, in the womb, all the way up, and started just discovering them, locating them, and getting them out. And so that is what I've been doing all these years, every week. Every time I get triggered, every time I was getting upset, every time I was getting out of my peace, I said, okay, that's a thought pattern that has been in there all my life. And you know how when people say, I was doing great until that happened? No, you weren't doing great. You just never got triggered. And so that is part of the process, is how can you discover, do you really believe what you think you believe? It's a really great question. Because I go, oh, I believe that. Really? Well, maybe someone told it to me. Mm-hmm. And maybe you never investigated to find out if it was even true. Probably not. And you've been living your life according to it. Yeah. That's where I was, and that's where many people are.
Yeah. So 2009, I think you said it was. You're at the Plaza.
Mm-hmm.
Up to this point, you've been active in your church, I believe you said, and you've been saying lots of yeses to your church community. You've got your career. There's been lots of yesing going on as well, I believe is what I heard you say. You're thinking about you're just saying yes, doing what is expected of you in your church, in your career, family as well. So is this apply to wife, kids, friends as well?
Yeah, I never had children, but when I grew up, I was one of those curious people because people would say things and I would say, okay, what do you mean? Because your definition is different than theirs, I've noticed. And so people got tired of that questioning. And so when I would start doing my instructions in engineering and sales and executives, they loved my classes because for the first time, I explained things. I didn't just say, do something. And I noticed that also in this field of coaching. Change your thinking. Get rid of those negative thoughts. And I would say, okay, how? Well, stop procrastinating. How? Well, just get rid of toxic people. How? And that's something totally different that I help people with is I give you the how. I don't just tell you what to do, which is what most people do. Well, I didn't know I should stop procrastinating. Why didn't you tell me that earlier? Jeez, man. And that's how silly that sounds, But you go to these seminars and you listen to these people and they'll give you all this beautiful advice to do. And you go home and you're like, okay. And you're stuck. And so I take over from there. Okay. You heard you need to stop procrastinating. Let's find out why you are and what even is the definition of procrastination. So we go really deep into this because most of this is superficial. And that's what stuck with me, Mischa, is all this superficial teaching and learning that I did because no one really explained things. It didn't make sense. When I was 9 years old, my mom said, don't go out in the cold without a coat or you'll catch a cold. In the summer, I got a cold and I thought, she doesn't know what she's talking about. So for the first time, I realized I'm listening to people that maybe they don't even know what they're talking about. That was a huge, huge revelation for me at 9 years old, right? And so that's when I started being inquisitive and saying, all right, what else have I just taken as truth that's not necessarily true, right? And so I've carried that through my entire life. And so that's how I do all of my teaching, all of my sessions and my coaching is let's really get into what's really happening. Let's find out what's really there.
Mm. And then that's cool. And I just want to go back just a little bit too, because it's fun to get the full frame. Are you, when you're doing this pre-awareness or pre-change or pre, bottom moment at the hotel, you're doing this training, you're doing this coaching, it's all in the engineering and tech space. And is it your own business or do you work for a company as a trainer, or paint the picture of what's going on?
Okay. I started at IBM when I was still in college, University of North Texas. And it was what they called an education co-op. And I was 19. And I was in administration and then I changed over to being an engineer. Did that for about 8 years after I graduated from university. And I became a sales guy because I got tired of the salespeople selling the customer just because that's what they got paid on. And I had to make it work. And I thought, this is stupid. So I became a sales guy, which means I don't need an engineer because I know it all. And I don't need a salesperson because I know how to sell. And it was great because I would walk into the customer and say, I'm not here to sell you anything. What do you mean? I want to work with you to help you with your company. I want to help build what you're doing. Oh, it was totally different. And then people would say, how'd you sell that? Because I wasn't trying to sell them anything. And so then the customer was complaining things weren't working. And so I developed customized training. And that's how I became a trainer, is I just did that on my own. And then, IBM People thought that was a secure job. Well, in 1992, IBM fired 160,000 employees. Not 10, not 20, 160,000. Now, I left 2 weeks before the firing. I didn't know that was happening. An opportunity came up and they said, hey, would you like to travel and develop courses and teach? Yes. And so that's how I did that. Then I went on my own. IBM called me back, said, would you like to be a consultant? And I said, okay. I didn't know what that was. So I had some meetings with some people that had been consultants for a while. And they said, well, you're 31 years old. You're kind of young, but you know a lot of stuff. So I'd put you in the middle of the price range. I said, well, what's the middle? $1,200 a day. And I said, I was making $3,000 a month at IBM after 14 years. And now I'm starting to see my, what's the word? Value. Because I was told my value, $3,000 a month. And here is this guy saying, no, based on what you know, it's like a day. I thought, so then I told IBM, that's my chart, my price. And after a few negotiations, they were paying me $1,000 a day. My first check, Mischa, $6,000, twice what I made in a month at IBM. I thought, is this going to bounce? And so that's why I know sometimes when people want things to happen fast, I realize we can't handle fast, because, I just want to be healed fast. Let's do it in the time frame that your body and your mind can handle, right? Because I'm telling you, that first check of $6,000, I was shaking because that's 2 months of work. I did it in a week. And then a couple years later, a headhunter called me and said, Cisco is looking for instructors. So I was a consultant for Cisco for 27 years. That's how I have 5 million American airline miles, just American. I have other airlines too, but I was traveling 30 years every week. I lived out of a suitcase. I left on Saturday night, came back Friday night for 30 years. And I just, 46, 47 weeks out of the year. And so that was my life. And so, I just, how there's things you just know, right? That you would, how do I know that? Right? I'm sure there's things that you just know. I just know stuff. And they said, well, where'd you get that? I just know it, and that's, I could learn. I would go to customers and they would say, do you know this? I said, I don't, but I don't need to. What do you mean? Just give me a couple of days and I'll learn it and I'll teach you. And that's what I did. I learned something that took them months and I learned it in a couple of days. And that's how I did artificial intelligence. These guys said, are you a scientist? I said, let me tell you what I can do. I can get the information requirements from a customer, talk to the project manager, talk to the IT department. I can build an entire data center by myself. I can also create the modeling for the AI, help you understand what type of images go into the AI, look at the analytics of the AI, explain that to the executive so they can talk to the customer. Can you do that? No. Well, that's what I do. And so this is what I mean. It's not a lot of people that can do that. And I was in San Francisco and this guy said, that's a $500,000 a year job. I said, exactly. See, so that's what I was doing all those years. And then that's why I met these people that were some of my students had 3 PhDs. I just finished a 4-year military contact. It was programming for the Marines in Kansas City. And so that's what I do. I just help all these things. So here I am in Crown Plaza, and that's what I mean. All that stuff came to a head where I'm going, I'm so good at all the things that I would like to be doing music.
Look, I just want to be playing music.
Yeah. Well, my sister, when I explained what I was doing, she said, oh my gosh, John's her husband. He said, that's my life. I wanted to be an artist. And my parents said, no, you're working for the company. You're working for the family business. You can go to school later. 30 years later, he thinks, I never did what I want to do. So he left. Now He's working in a little company designing flower arrangements for huge company events, loving it because it's his artistry. But you see what I mean? There's probably hundreds of millions of people in this same situation where when you really talk to them, they said, well, actually, I really want to do this. You know?
Yeah. So now you've got the Mind Your Health Academy. And
Yes.
anybody watching, listening can go to mindyourhealthacademy.com and you have a free 5-day fulfillment and success challenge. Your headline is, Are You Living an Empty Life? And that is going to resonate with some people, even though they have the shiny objects, the cars, the house, the kids, who knows? They're like, wait, why am I empty? But anyway, so tell me about your challenge. What's going on here?
It's what I do in there is what I was explaining earlier is I talk about how our mind works. What is our mind? I talk about, like, for example, Dr. Bruce Lipton, 1985. Every doctor and medical person thought that the cell requires the DNA to survive. He takes the DNA out, it lives. Blew everybody away. So then he says, well, wait a second. That means that every cell is an intelligent being. Yes. So where is our mind? In every cell of the body. So that's kind of what I take people through. That's just an example. I reveal what's actually happening. Hey, that's a negative emotion. What is negative and positive? Well, Candace Pert, in her book, Molecules of Emotion, she says there are no negative or positive. It's just an emotion because they all get processed the same way. It's whatever we associate to an event is what makes it what we think negative or positive. You see what I mean? So that's what I do in the challenge. I bring people to a level of understanding and awareness about everything they've heard. Like, I was wondering about that exactly. And what is the chemical? Well, there's a chemical and there's an electrical current. And this, I actually taught in my AI classes to all these scientists, PhD guys, because the AI model is all built on how the brain works. And so I got into your neurons. I got into all of the things with the network and how it has to have a certain threshold of energy. You know how people say you have to have a burning desire for something? How many people, when they say, well, what don't you like? Well, now tell me what you do like. Well, and when you realize that your neurons fire because it has to have a certain amount of energy, now that makes sense. Oh, so the things that you want, you're so passive. And the things that you don't want, well, that goes past the energy and now your neurons fire. You see what I mean? So it's that type of knowledge that I go through so people, it starts making sense. You're not just told, well, this is this. That never worked for me. And now when I talk to people, they realize, okay, so I go through that for my 5 days. And those are just some examples. And then Harvard Business Review about 15 years ago, they had a study where they said, what's the difference between C-level executives and non? It wasn't their schooling. It wasn't their status. It wasn't their culture. It was their intuition. So this is out publicly. It's not news. So I started going to an intuition class. A very amazing friend of mine, Merit Ariel, she has a clairvoyant intuition class, and I went to it like the last 2 years and just started exercising my intuition. And so as a result of that, all the stuff I learned, I put together it's a 21-minute, it's a video that shows animation, and then it's also an audio, and that's my free offer. It removes any energy that is not yours from your bioenergy field. It takes you through a grounding, takes you through making intentions, takes you through putting a sphere of protection around you, takes you through being able to get cosmic energy and fill all of your cells. So it's a whole system. And so it gets you ready for the day. And that's another thing that I go through when I do coaching. So that's my free offer. And that was like 2 years of knowledge put into a 21-minute video. So yeah.
Nice. So you're in the 5-day challenge, helping lift the veil for somebody so they can get a
Perfect.
vision at least,
Beautifully said. Beautifully said.
of what a fulfilled life could be like versus an empty
Yes.
life. Yeah, start giving them a taste of that fulfillment, perhaps. Do you have any favorite customer, or maybe customer's not the right word, but client success stories?
Oh, absolutely. I'll just give you a couple. And my partner, she's from Costa Rica. That's one of the reasons we're living here. We were in Paris 4 or 5 years ago, and we were standing in line to get in front of the Mona Lisa. And she has forever had this claustrophobic, can't be in an elevator, can't be in a pool, can't be in a closed room, even escalators, okay. So here we are with all these people. She's like, and she leaves because she can't handle it. I'm like, okay, I've had it. We were in line for 3 hours, right? Okay. So we go home, and I have about 15 tools. I'll say tools, methods, processes that I use, because there's not one size that fits all. Like building a house, you don't have a hammer. In fact, you may have 3 different hammers and 5 different Phillips. And so I have a huge tool bag of things that I picked up that depends on the scenario. So I chose one of these tools, and I went through it that night. The next day, she had a dental appointment and she had to go up in an elevator. So she texts me and she goes, "Unbelievable. It's called." I said, "What?" "Claustrophobia." "Really?" She goes, "Yeah. I went up the elevator 5 times. Oh. So, okay. So that's one. And then another guy, he had been trying to get a job for 2 years, sent out all these resumes. And so, I was at a place where I was talking to people, and I said, "Okay, I think these really work." And so he says, "Well, I don't have any money." I said, "Okay." I was in the same spot. I was at the point where I just did not want to do anything anymore. And I said, "All right, I don't believe this works." So I said, "Why don't we work on your catch 22? Because if you don't believe something doesn't work, then it's difficult for it to work." So he came to class, and we worked on that disbelief for the first hour. And then we worked on, "Well, what do you want?" "I'd like to have a job where I make $6,000, $7,000 a month." Okay. So we worked on that, all the disbeliefs and all the patterns of thought, everything he had, picked up in the years. He comes back from lunch and he says, "One of the companies I sent a resume to 2 years ago called me, and we talked. He interviewed me, and he offered me a job for $10,000 a month." I said, "So after taxes, about 7, right?" So he says, "Quite." So it doesn't always work that quick, because it depends on how deep, whatever the scenario is. Sometimes it might take a few months. It took a long time for me because, Mischa, I had no feeling. To survive, I had to shut off all feeling. I didn't even know people were hurting me. That's how crusted I was. And that guy's really dissing you. He was. I didn't even know if people were mean to me, because I had to, my environment I grew up in, I had to shut off everything. So part of it is, if you have to work on just feeling, well, then that's one of the first things we work on. So that's why sometimes it might take more time, but those are just 2 out of hundreds of examples where it can be just like that.
Awesome. What is your favorite way to grow your business now? I'm assuming you're treating this like a business, which you're trying to grow it, or where are you in that whole space?
I set myself up so that I really don't need the money from this, so that I don't have an energy of desperation. I want you to pay because I want you to prove to yourself you're worth it. And if you need help learning you're worth it, then pay, invest in yourself, and then you will realize, "Oh my gosh." Because how many people, you go to a car mechanic, "That'll be 2,500. No, okay. The season tickets, 5,000. Okay. Mine's $900 a month. Excuse me? Seriously. And so that's where people have to be. So, it's like you do it or you don't. And so I'm growing it. I do some one-on-ones, but I'm only going to have like maybe 10 or 12 max. And then I'm going to do some groups because I really prefer group settings because there's such an amazing dynamic when there's interaction. So yes, I would like to get to the point where maybe I've got, 6 or 8 people in a group and I've got 10 of those, but again, I realized the same thing was happening at Cisco. They would say, how many people maximum in your class? 20. Well, any more than 20 people, they don't participate. See, they're only thinking about money, 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 money. I'm thinking about making sure people actually come away with being able to do what we taught. So yes, I do want to grow, but it's growth in you.
So if I hear you correctly, it's like you've had a successful life according to the standard metrics. You got some money in the bank. You've got perhaps a house or two across the globe. Currently living in Costa Rica.
Costa Rica. Got 2 houses in Costa Rica.
Amazing. And so now you're really moving from the heart and to serve.
Yes.
And really tapped into that. And this is the way that you've been called to serve the world. Yeah.
Exactly.
So you're currently looking to grow that. Do you like playing in the social media, or podcasting's your favorite, or what's your sort of favorite?
This has been tremendous, phenomenal. You're amazing in the way that you listen and pick up and catch up, and we kind of go off of things that we talk about. So yeah, I'd love to do hundreds of these. In fact, I'd like to do speaking engagements because that's what I was doing. They would send me to these places and they say, okay, could you demystify artificial intelligence to these 50 executives? That's what I was doing. And they said, now don't get too technical. I said, no, if you make things relevant, I can go as deep. And that's what was happening. These executives would go, oh my gosh, so that's a no one? And they said, how did you do that? It's just a gift. I just have a way of explaining things that some people find difficult and I make it simple. So yes, I'd love to be in groups, big things and events and stuff. And then, the one-on-ones for some people that really want to do stuff. And I became a reverend about 3 years ago, and I got knighted in the Knights of St. John. And I did that for a couple of reasons, because I wanted to be able to be under the radar, because there are a lot of people that want to be private and maybe they don't want anyone to know what's going on. So I can do that as well. So I set myself up so I can be incognito, be private, and be available for whatever people want.
Fantastic. Are you building an email list or anything fun like that?
Yes, I am. And that's what I had a summit a year and a half ago. I had 33 speakers, and then I had a 5-day challenge back in October. And I'm going to have these challenges maybe every 2 months. And through all those, I'm my email list is getting bigger and bigger. And then I also have other people that I met in the summit. Some of them have 50,000 email people. And so I just send them, hey, I'm doing this. Oh, great. So really my email list is probably 300,000.
Yeah.
But it's not mine. It's just that I met some of these people. They charged $15,000 to speak, and they spoke in my summit for free.
Yeah.
Because I read their book and I interviewed them. They said, oh my gosh, this was great. So they did all that for free for me. And we have great relationships. And so that's really how I'm doing this.
Is the summit evergreen perchance? Can I look it up?
The summit? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I'll give you a link that has all the people that I had on my summit, and you can contact them. But yeah, it'll show you everything that I had. And if you want the videos, I'll even make the videos available, for a VIP price that I charge. There's 32 videos, and these are phenomenal. Like I said, some of these charge a lot of money. Most of them, I'd say 95% are published, multiple published, and some of the world travelers and just amazing people. So yeah, I'll give you the link. And, if you pay for access to the videos, absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Cool. And then your personal email list, have you built it up to 300 people?
Well, like I said, I have several hundred people on my email list, but again, the people that I have, they push it out to their thousands of people.
Yeah.
And that's kind of how I envisioned it. Because because some of these people, I got 5,000 people. How long did it take you? Several years. Well,
Yeah.
okay. So I took the route of finding these people that had thousands upon people. And so that's how I have that. And then as I get people to come in, and remember, I did all this stuff for free for years. I just started charging just the last couple of years. So that's why I don't have 10,000 people. So now I'm building my email list.
I love it. That's good. That's great. And then leveraging other people's audiences is so powerful. So well done there. Is there a favorite thing right now that you're doing as far as building your business that seems to be working best for you?
The videos that I put out, they're a lot of what I talk about inside the challenges. And a lot of the information I get is from some of the things that I learned from working with people. Because when you wonder, how did you get to that point? Like, for example, there was one that grew up in a very wealthy family. And you remember the movie Coming to America, Eddie Murphy,
Yeah.
where he says, do you think I could actually go to the bathroom myself? He goes, this is how his life was. Everything was done. And so then he ends up going, I have no idea how to do anything. Right? And so how can a guy that has millions not even know what to do? Because everything was done for me. And so these are the things that I put in my videos is, how do you know if you believe what you believe? That's one. Another one is, are emotions negative or positive? So that's what I do is I put these videos out. They're like 2 or 3 minutes where it's consider these ideas. And then people start commenting that, well, I never thought of it like that. And so that's what I'm doing right now. And I got them on TikTok. I got them on Facebook.
Fantastic. As far as the unlifting the veil of helping people, get out of that feeling of living an empty life, what are like a couple, in 5 minutes or less, like what's your top tips for people that someone listening to this could implement or take away?
Perfect. First thing is to get honest with yourself. Now, let me explain what that means. I'll use me. Are you happy? I don't know what that means. Okay, well, let's start investigating what happy could mean. Are you living the life you want to live? Who does that? And then I started looking at some of these people, sports stars, celebrities, thinking, so there are people that do whatever they want to do. Yes. So the possibility exists. Yes. Well, I never knew that. Okay. So to be honest, then to realize, am I happy? All right. So then I started realizing, well, maybe I need to start thinking about what I want because I've spent my whole life thinking about what I don't want. So being honest with yourself, figuring out what you really believe, not what someone told you, not what you read, not what you're supposed to believe. Get rid of all the dogma and all the cultures and stuff, because that's a huge thing. Cultures and religion, all that stuff. In the movie Angels and Demons, Bateman and Tom Hanks, he says, do you believe in God? He says, Father, no, not the God man created, but God. Oh, gosh, when I heard that, I thought, so that's what I mean. Do you really, can you be honest and do you really believe that? I'm supposed to. I'm not asking that. I'm asking, do you? No, I don't. Thank you. So this is like huge. Okay, so then the next thing is start defining things that you want. And I mean, seriously, what do you want? Don't think, well, there's no way for me. No. What do you want? Number 3, and this is a big one too.
Love it.
The only way to do change is you have to believe that you have a part in creating what's happening. Otherwise, there's no hope. You have to believe that you influence what's happening in your life. Otherwise, there's nothing to change. So those are the 3 big things.
Love it. Be honest with yourself, figure out what you really believe, and start defining what you want.
Yes.
I love that last little bit. Trust, or you got to have that shift that I can influence what's happening around me.
Yes. Yeah, because like I grew up, you're not doing anything. And I have a video on that very thing. if anything great happened, it was luck or God. If anything bad, well, that was me. And I thought, well, what's that all about? So I have a video on that very topic.
Fantastic. I want to be cognizant of time. Before we stop here, inevitably, I'll hit stop and everyone will has the thought, oh, I wished I'd have said, or I meant to talk about, or something like that. So before we stop here, is there anything that comes to mind?
No, I think you did a tremendous job asking me some good questions because these are the things I really wanted to talk about. And it just segued right into it. So no, I just thank you for mentioning my 5-day challenge. And also please take advantage of the offer and please register. Go to that site, mindyourhealthacademy.com, and just realize that you can change things. And it just takes some time to get past whatever uncertainty or doubts or unbeliefs revolve around that.
Fantastic. Vangelis, this has been a ton of fun. I'm going to hit stop and we'll say goodbye offline.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Table Rush Talk Show. For resources to help you sell your stuff, go to belove.media/resources. That's belove.media/resources. And be sure to subscribe, comment, 5-star, and share. Thank you again for listening.